All right, we're going to start here in 1 minute. What I do want you guys to be thinking about on this session, because today is goals. And I mean, really, the last 3 sessions were really, I mean, there was a lot of information to ramp up about the database and having a master list and how to feed it every day. And that's the biggest piece I see missing when, I mean, analyzing anybody's database in their business. I don't find too many people that are feeding every day. And I mean, really, in 5 years, if you were focused on it, it'll be 6,000 people. So like David was sharing that he figured out, it really is the database, and all of it's the database. You can still keep doing all the other, we can do other cool stuff and marketing things and great like client appreciation parties and all that stuff. When you get that core database going and you're feeding it every day and systematically communicating with it, then when everything else that you're doing and all the cool stuff, fun things that you hear about in real estate, you're going to get probably a 4 or 5 times bigger result from those, because now you're mastering the follow-up, and it's all in the follow-up. And the follow-up meaning 4 calls a year, every year minimum. Everything else is gravy. That will, the 4 phone calls, if you had no drip pieces in between, would probably still double or triple your business every year. So it's just that core peeling it back. But today, when we're talking about goals, I mean, this is really where I need to hear from you guys, because goals are one of those things, like, we all have them, we all see them, we all hear them, we get packets every year, we do our annual business plan, we fill in all these numbers. And I just need to hear from you guys, what do you feel is working for setting goals for yourself? What do you feel is really not working for setting goals? I see a lot of business plans where it's goal setting. We do them in the beginning of the month, or usually in October or November, and they might be on our desk till January, and then somehow they just disappear. They're buried under a pile or stuck somewhere. Very few people do I know like look at their annual plan throughout the year and have really true like goals that run all year long. So today we're going to touch on the 411, and like anything, I just hope to have the conversation go around having you think a little differently about maybe some goal setting tactics that you've had in the past or used in the past or heard about. Hopefully you'll think differently about the 411 after today, and that's just really tearing it apart and looking at it at a mastery level. So what do you guys tell me about goals? What do you think? How do goals work for you? How do you do it on the things that you do get done? What do you think you've done with goals that didn't work? Where are you guys sitting as far as what have you actually done? Anybody, have you set any goals for 2022 yet? And so maybe this is a great class to goal set. Did you set goals for last year? Did you hit them? Did you not hit them? What was your goal for last year? Anybody set anything?
I mean, on our team, we set goals by person and just transaction count goals, across months of the year. So we've gone through that exercise.
So was that a goal that you set like at the very beginning of the year and tracked it all year long, or was it something you did somewhere along the way and you were just more of a short-term goal, or what did it really look like in 2022?
Doing 21. I mean, I think for last year, because I just really joined the team in April, so Kyle and Greg had goals, transaction count goals, and I mean, we just kind of monitor them through the year. I do the financials for the team, so at the end of every month, we look at our goals, we look at our transaction counts, we look at our finances from this year to last year, and just kind of have discussions.
All right.
We didn't really change action, I guess. If we didn't meet our goals, we weren't trying to figure out, well, what do we need to do different next month? It was informationable. It wasn't something that did a really good job acting on it.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. For the most part, I heard most of it. So it's kind of a little echoey out of the room, but I do appreciate you sharing that. And I think I picked up the gist of it. Anybody else, same thing? Can you say the same thing? Like maybe you have set goals and it's just something that's set. Did you hit it? How did you hit it? Or did it kind of get faded away and maybe not even really paying attention to it? Do you find that that's where a lot of goals end up? Or maybe I just haven't found the right goal setting method that I like yet that gets me excited. Could that be? Setting goals is kind of like goals is 4-letter word, kind of like lead, right? Lead generation, goal setting. And yet those are the core fundamentals to really having a successful business. So are you guys just, I mean, do you just really come in and work hard every day and you don't necessarily have to have goals? I mean, and you just come in and work every day and you have good success?
I sat down and I did goals for last year. Didn't come anywhere near it. It was a good process to go through it and look at how many appointments I needed to be able to get my closing goals. So I understand the system. Have I done it for this year? Well, I've kind of set my goal for how many closings I'd like to have this year, but I haven't done the groundwork to see what I need to get there. Part of that's because I've been working on the database and trying to get some lead generation going.
Awesome. Yeah. And I've got a 2-page questionnaire that it's one of those things that you sit down and you interview and you go through that with your agents and get their goals and stuff. It almost is like, it's like right now, the reason why I'm asking this question is if I sat down with all of you and started going through this, you'd have to be making some numbers up or just kind of guessing at a couple of things, some of the things you wouldn't know. So what I've been doing is just kind of editing the document a little bit. I plan on just sending that out to everyone. And I know everyone won't rush it back to me, but I hope to get it back from everyone because there's probably about 15 questions on there that will just have you looking at your business, Dave, just like that. It's like you had one of the questions and then there's 4 more in there that would have pulled those next steps out. And just, it's not a formal business plan. It's just questions. How much money would you like to make next year, right? And then it's like, what's your average sale price? And you might not know that off the top of your head. And what I don't like to see people do it from a coaching perspective is kind of wing the numbers, just kind of, well, I think it's around 200,000. You know, what would it be like this year? It's probably 2.25 would be my average sale price. And we're just pulling numbers out of the air. It's not bad if you don't know how to go find out what your actual numbers are. But one of the things that I'll share today is actually tracking your numbers because, well, we'll talk about it in a minute. When I tracked numbers for teams and what they said they were doing and what their numbers actually showed were 2 different things. So whenever you're basing it on some of these models and you're just using the model numbers and you find out if your numbers may not be in line with the model yet, again, what's great about that tracking is then you find out where your weak points are in your business. Like, do I really need to get stronger scripts in my listing side of my business or my buyer side of my business or whatever? Anybody else have anything to add about goals? Thank you both for sharing that. Just either what you struggle with or maybe why you haven't really set goals before. Maybe you didn't have to set goals before, depending on what business you're coming from. I don't know if you guys have goals in the air tower there, Brad. I mean, now you're in a business where we're asking you how many sales you get, how many calls you can make every day. You probably don't have to do that in your current job. Maybe you do. I don't know.
Not really. We just have our monthly meetings, and then I set up meetings with my guys upstairs to make sure everything's running smoothly.
Yeah. So goals. Oh, go ahead.
Segue of a career path. So it's just kind of piggybacking off of whatever Marie's doing and whatever I can help her with and help us grow in that aspect is
So
about it.
setting goals in this tracking is kind of a new world for you.
Yeah, because with my current career, it's more of these are the tasks that need to be done this month or this quarter, and it's repetitive. So
Yeah.
it's not really goals to achieve anything. I can't say, hey, more airplanes need to fly, because that's not up to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And Chris, who's now in the picture, he had a goal to at least have one more birthday this year, and he did that well. Oh, they must have me muted. He didn't react to it at all. Okay, cool. So let's get into the information, and maybe that will spur the conversation on a little bit more. And again, with the Spark, we're on Spark number 5. So if you guys downloaded the manual, there actually, I'm going to pull a couple pages out in here. There are a couple of forms in here that you're going to want to refer to. And one of them is the 411. I know you've probably, if you haven't heard 411 before, you'll hear it in the Keller Williams culture. And I'm just going to preface it right now when we get to that page. A 411 is probably one of the coolest, most awesome tools ever invented if it's used properly. So I'll probably give you a different perspective on how to use the 411 today. And if you capture that, you'll probably see the power in what we're talking about as far as goal setting goes. And we're really even going to talk about in setting goals right now. Some of you may just be starting with your absolute have to do goal. And I use this kind of as an example. It came out on another call earlier where somebody, it's a single mom, been through a divorce, was getting alimony. The alimony is about to end, and she's nervous about being able to provide. And I've heard it from single moms a ton. It's like, I just want to provide on my own without any help. I don't want to have to use that money to survive. I want to make my own money. And I still want to enjoy my life and my kid and all that other stuff. So for that particular person, just $60,000 a year doesn't sound like a whole lot. And she even said, I don't even know if that's a big enough goal. And guys, it's your goal. I mean, you get to set what it is and what your lifestyle is. And what she's basically setting is the core survival goal, right? And she said, and I've just about got my credit cards and my car paid off. So her credit cards are $9,000 and her car is $7,000, which actually, in my opinion, 16 grand is still a lot of money to be almost paid off. So she must be chunking away at that thing hard. So anyway, she's working real hard and just struggling to like get the business consistent, which again, it comes back to the database and the consistent, persistent, boring activities. They seem boring when you're doing them, and they don't seem like they're as productive as other things that you could be doing. And it's the most productive thing. But anyway, it got down to, so if you figure out what your average sale price is and you divide that into the 60 with the 3% and you just run the numbers backwards, I mean, that's the minimum number of sales she has to get to be able to be free from the other money and to actually get the car and the credit cards paid off. So if we set that as the goal for this year, for her, it's 2 sales a month. It's going to require 2 sales a month. So right now we're coming into the 3rd week of January and she doesn't have 2 sales on the books. And it's the end of January. I mean, the first month of the year, guys, is already gone. We're already a third of the way through the first quarter. We're a 12th of the way through the year. And it just keeps going faster. And one of the things when I was coaching agents is like whenever they would set goals and they weren't like right now, they're not on track. So you just get to have this real conversation with yourself when you understand goals now, that's a bare minimum goal. That's not just a good goal or my goal for the year and I'm going to do better and do good and all that stuff. That's just to cover the bills. It's like, so listen, here's what the reality. Right now, you can't pay off your car, for example, whichever one's at the higher interest rate is probably the one I'd pay off first. So you can't pay off your car. Well, no, I mean, that's really not an option. I do not want to have that car payment. Okay, well, you either have to have 2 sales on the books in the next week and a half, or you're not paying off your car. Because the next month, you're going to have to do 4 sales. And if you didn't do 2 sales in January, how are you all of a sudden going to do 4 sales in February unless you do the numbers? So that's where we start getting into what we're talking about today, is setting goals, getting the training, getting the coaching to hold you accountable to yourself, and just to point that stuff out. Because by month 3, if no sales are on the board, I'm telling you, the car's not getting paid off, and probably the credit cards won't get paid off, because we haven't developed the right pattern and doing the right things to make sure that was going to happen. Based on the 60,000 plus the 15,000, 75 is 2 sales a month. So if you do less than that, you're not going to make 75,000. So again, that's where I want you guys to start thinking. And as we're going through this information, I hope you're looking at like what your core is and go, okay, I'm 3 weeks in and I'm not sure if I'm on track for what I really want to do, and bring that up, because that is what we're talking about today and can help you focus on the right activities to get it back on track. So this is really truly about envisioning your big life. There is no judgment, at least from me. Like when she said 60,000 is probably not really setting my goals high enough. I mean, based on whose opinion, right? I mean, you get to set it for whatever you need to set it for and what you have to do. So for your big life, I mean, it's in the one thing: who we are and where we want to go determine what we do and what we accomplish. And taking this from just a saying into like bringing it into this conversation, whatever that goal is, it's really easy to divide it by 12, whether it's volume, whether it's transactions, whether it's anything, divide it by 12. And a lot of people will say, well, January and February are slower than August and September, and November and December are slower. So everything's slower on the front of the year and it's bigger on the end of the year. If you set your goal that you absolutely life and death situation, the car, the credit card, and the 60,000 in this example had to happen or you will die at the end of the year, you might as well get 1/12 of it in now. And then you'd have some gravy in the middle of the year if you actually are busier, but that becomes your absolute minimum. I mean, we're going to talk about some more examples where we'll break that down today to kind of bring this into reality. Like, this is what you have to do. So whatever it's going to take to get there. And if 3 weeks have slipped by and it takes 100 calls a week to get 1 appointment, and you have to have 4 appointments to list 2 or 3 homes a month, then you have to get 400 calls crammed in the next week and a half. So it might mean all hands on deck, and you're going to do 8 hours of calls every day for the next 3 days. You know what? You just got to do what you got to do. Whatever you want to accomplish, you can get there if you do the right activities. And that's what we'll talk about today, is how to figure out what those activities are. Any questions so far about any of this that we're talking about, or the way goals are working for you or not working? So on this screen here, we're talking about just think, act, and achieve, and the thinking versus your time and effort. And it's about the actions that you're doing, whether they're creating big results or small outcomes. And probably the best example that was just most recent, a most recent conversation, was an agent was asking, so what's the best way to, farm a neighborhood? And we're looking at the actions to get the results that we need for appointments, right? So like, is it drop off flyers? And, again, talking about, could you put them in the mailbox or put them on the door? It's COVID, door knocking versus flyers, all this other stuff. So the activity that rang to me was like an action that gets a small outcome, and it just has for history, is if I were to do a postcard mailing to that neighborhood, I can mail to, let's just say, a neighborhood of 500 homes, right? So if I mail a postcard to, are the neighborhoods about 500 homes, or are they smaller than that in Topeka on average? You guys see, like, are they 200, 250, or are they 500? Are they all the above, or what do you guys think?
I'd say like 250. I don't know.
250? Yeah, I think I've heard that from several people, that the neighborhoods really, like, there's not too many neighborhoods that in that subdivision, there's 1,000 homes. Is that what I'm hearing correct? That there's more like 250? Oh, that might be background noise. Anybody else have anything to add on that? What's the average size? Or, I mean, is a 250 neighborhood pretty common? Yeah.
I think so.
Okay. Okay. So we'll use 250 as an example. So if I'm going to farm a neighborhood of 250 homes and I'm going to mail a postcard through there. So you put a postcard together. If you have done this already, maybe you can share your results. You mail it the first month. How many listing appointments do you get? Most likely none, right? If you're lucky, you got one. Anybody else done one postcard mailing to a neighborhood, got better results than that? Okay, maybe you guys haven't done postcard mailings. You mail the second month, probably still nothing. Third month, probably still nothing. We know that if you mail to them for about 6 months to a year, you'll start to pick up some appointments. Not all of them, but some. You're just starting to get mind share. And again, that's if your marketing piece and headline capture and all that stuff's good. So that's an action that's getting a small outcome. It's not, and when you first start anything, this is the part I want you to get, to track it. Even, I'm not saying that postcard mailing is a bad thing, but track it. If it's costing you X amount of dollars to do it and you do it for a month, how many appointments did you get? Track that, put it on a board somewhere. I got 0. Track it for the next month, track it for the, and when you start getting results, if you keep doing it a little longer, start tracking how many appointments you're getting so you can see how it works. Now, if I wanted to take a better action to get a bigger outcome, because my goal is to close 2 a month, and this is what I'm using as my source, or one of my sources, and it first month nothing, second month nothing, that's not working. So I need to do something better. So what if I did the same exact thing, but I'm going to go knock on the doors and hand the owner the postcard? I mean, it's better than just mailing it to their box, waiting for them to call. But if I were to go to that neighborhood and start at the beginning and knock on doors until 5 people answered, and just assume that even in COVID, that you wore a mask and you stood 6 feet back, so they might actually crack their door open and be a little safe about it. You're not running up and hugging them and shaking their hands or anything. You're actually, you figure out a way to stand back and say, hey, I know it's COVID times, but I am in this neighborhood all the time helping people protect their values. So rather than just throw something in your mailbox, I just want to stop by and hand that card to you. I set it on your porch, and you got septic gloves on, just for example. I just want you guys to follow the story. But if I were to knock on those doors until 5 people answered their door and I handed them the postcard and they saw who I was, that's going to have a better effect than if it just showed up in their mailbox. Would you agree? And if I took and I left that neighborhood after those 5 people answered the door, and I go back and I write a note, thank you so much for answering the door. I know that's not a common thing that you see today, blah, 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 but it was really great meeting you and hearing about your house, or how much you love the neighborhood, or whatever you talked about for that second you were there. Remember, I'm trying to get into conversation with them. So I'm doing a much bigger activity that I'm still doing the postcard, or whether I'm doing the postcard or not, I'm only hitting 5 houses. And I write the note and I put them in command and I put them on a smart plan, and then I'm going to call them again or drip on them some more. Now I go back there tomorrow and I knock on doors again, and I skip the 5 that answered, but I keep knocking on doors until 5 more people answer. And I'll do it the next day and the next day. So I've got maybe an hour invested a day, 5 days a week, and I'm knocking on doors till 5 people answer the doors. And I'm doing a bigger activity to get a bigger outcome. If you took 2.5 months and you went out there until 5 people answered the door every day, 5 new people, and you wrote them a note and you put them on a smart plan, we already know what the conversion rate is on an 8x8 from people you met, right? So assuming that you got a good enough connection that you could put them on a drip plan and stay in touch with them, better than just a postcard in the mailbox, it would take you 2.5 months to go to a neighborhood with 250 homes and meet every single homeowner. If you just kept going until the next 5 answered the door, the next 5, the next 5, the next 5. So some of these people, it might be 2 months you've been knocking on their door because you keep knocking on the door that didn't answer. You could have knocked on their door 60 times and they finally answered the door. It's not like they were sitting behind the door going, why is this person still knocking on my door? They're not going to give you 60 chances. but you just caught them on the right day at the right time and they opened the door. And it really, if you did that for 10 times, they'll probably like open the door and just go, all right, you've knocked on my door every day for the last 10 days. What do you need? I mean, that's what's going to happen before you get to 60 knocks, if they're actually sitting there on the other side of the door. Now, here's what I'm saying though. 250 homes, you go through, you knock on the door, you've written everybody a note, and now you're staying in touch with them. If you did the postcard route, how many appointments would you get after 6 months? If you did this route, how many appointments do you think you're going to have in 6 months? And here's all I want to ask, is not so much how many. Do you think you would have a lot more appointments from the door-to-door note, staying in touch, than you ever will with the postcards would ever generate ever? Would everybody agree that's a hands down?
Yeah.
Probably, because out of 250 home neighborhood, remember 25 to 50 of them are moving every year. And if you've met them all in 2.5 months, at least the next 5-6 months, you're going to capture at least 5 or 10 of them just because, and 50 of them are moving. So you might not get all 50. I don't know any postcard in the planet that would get you 10 listing appointments in 1 year out of one neighborhood. I don't know such a thing. I mean, it's usually you've done that for 10 or 15 or 20 years to get 5 or 6 or 7 appointments in a neighborhood, to get 5 listings in a neighborhood in a year. I mean, think about the last neighborhood that one person, not counting new construction, that's not fair because they get their sign in everybody's yard, but one neighborhood where you've seen somebody have more than 5 signs in a year in that neighborhood. It's so rare. I mean, it does happen, but it's rare. And that's where big top agents will like say, I'm going for 20% market share in a neighborhood. 20% of 50 is 10, right? I think that's right, right? Did I do my math right? So that'd be 10 listings. So it is possible that people do have 10% or 20% market share in a neighborhood. The thing is that the action was a bigger action, took more time, and it was more invested, but it was more relationship based, and the follow-up was there, that I got a bigger outcome on it. Does that make sense? So the point on this, on the goal setting, is what are the activities? Are you drilling your goals down enough to know exactly what the activities are? So it's not so much 2 listing appointments a month, it's 5 doors a day. And then whether you're doing that through calls or whether you're doing that through knocking or whatever, you got to drill that goal down to what is the actual action, what, who, and how, who does it, how does it get done, and track the results. So if you're not getting the results that you want to make sure that you're changing those results. Let me make sure I don't have any notes on here. So that goal ends up being your have to do list, not your to-do list. And a lot of people do turn their goals into to-do lists. So in your guide on page 3 is one of the first forms that we come up with. And this kind of comes back to what we talked about in session 1 with the know your why, or mastering the art of asking people's why and digging. And if you haven't been through them all yet, or you've missed that one, it's like, you know, what is your goal for your money? If it's 250,000, great. What are you going to do with that 250,000? I'm going to pay off my car. I'm going to pay off my debt. I'm going to cover my bills. I'll be able to pay for college, the college fund, you know, support that for my kids, whatever it might be, right? So that's what this form is for you to start to figure out where that's going to go. And you can put the dollar amount on what those things are and see if they match up, rather than just pulling the number out of the air, throwing it in there and see what happens, right? So like on the example, donate to cat habitat $5,000, get the school debt paid off $120,000. So those things that you want to accomplish for the year will total your amount that you need to get. So if you really want a challenging goal, do that first and then figure out what you need to make. And then it's like, ooh, $500,000. I have never made $500,000 before. What would that look like, right? And what activities would you have to do $500,000? So when you're looking at that stuff, it's really about setting up your life and what you need to do. And if it's $500,000, I'm going to tell you right now, you can make $500,000 in real estate, and you can make it in your second year in real estate. It's just you're going to have to look at every single day and really drill your goals down to what needs to happen each of those days, no matter what, to make sure you make $500,000. So it's really easy to figure out. Let me stop there. Is there anybody that any of this is hitting, like you're starting to think about your goals a little different, or you're looking at your number and it seems unattainable, or you're looking at your number and you're getting excited? Anybody want to jump in anything with what they're getting out of this so far? And just go ahead and unmute and go. Are you guys just having reality land in your lap?
I think the biggest thing that I have issues with is starting out is what is going to convert to try to get a close number. In other words, yeah, you can tell me that I could do, 100 houses and I should sell one or two. If I go door knock to 100 houses, somebody's going to be moving in there. But it's also, from there, I get an appointment. How many of those appointments are going to convert? I don't have anything to go off of. So even like based upon my 2 sales of last year, yeah, it's 149,000, but I know that the market in here is 184. So from last year. So yeah, where do I put the numbers? How do I go about that? How much of that action, how much work do I have to do to get those appointments?
I am so glad you shared that, seriously, because that actually is what this whole conversation is about. And we're on understanding your goal right now. So when you don't have a base to go off of, you're starting with a number. So you may start with a number where it's comfortable to call 20 people a week, okay? So if you call 20 people a week, or you have your list that you did, whatever activity you're doing, write down the number of ticks that you dialed the numbers. I love going clear back to the dials, because in the beginning of real estate, what you don't understand is you might have to do 100 dials to get 40 people to pick up the phone, right? And if I'm saying I need to call 100 people to get one appointment, but I do 100 dials and only get 40 people on the phone and I still don't have an appointment, I had a list of 100, but I only got 40 people on the phone. I can't set an appointment with anybody that doesn't answer the phone. So that was one of the things I started out the conversation with. You want to know what your real numbers are, and it doesn't matter what your real numbers are. You might have to talk to 1,000 people to get that one appointment. So then it comes back to the reality of, if it's the 60,000, the car and the credit card, and it's 2 sales a month, and I'm doing 100 and not getting any appointments, and I do 100 the next week and I'm not getting any appointments, and I do 100 the next week and I get an appointment. In reality, you need 300 to get one appointment. That's your current conversion rate. So now what you do the next week is, it's like, okay, I can't do 100 anymore. I have to try and figure out how I'm going to do 300 things. And I know, bold, try. No, you're going to figure out, how the heck do I call 300 people in the next week? Because if you do that, Dave, when you're setting that standard and you do 300 next week and you get one more appointment, you're 300 to 1. I mean, that's just what it is. And what will happen though, is as you do 300 next week, you'll finally start getting 2. And then you do 300 the next week and you'll get 2. Now you're ahead of goal, right? So now, and 300's brutal if you were to do that in a week, right? That's like 5.5 hours per 100. So you're talking 17 to 20 hours of just straight, like as soon as you hang up the phone, we're not doing notes and going into command and updating the record and looking for the next person to call. It's hang up, pick back up, and dial the next number for 20 hours straight for a week. Now, reality is, if you did that for 20 hours a week in your real estate business, you will have 100 sales a year. It's going to happen by accident, right? But what we do is we do 4 or 5 hours of busy work, and we've really only picked up the phone and dialed it a few times throughout the day, trying to figure out who to call next, or we went through a couple no's or used an old list. It was dead numbers, all that stuff. So once I know my conversion rate to these lists that I'm going off of, 50% of them are dead numbers. So I need to know, I got to get a big enough list to get the number I need to get the appointments that I need. And you track it with ticks. So if it's 300, it's 300, and then you'll start getting better and you'll realize you don't have to do as much. And then again, side note, if you master keeping in touch with all the people that don't hang up on you, write the note and put them on an 8x8 and stay in touch with them, pretty soon you won't have to do any of this, because your business will start kicking back out of the database by staying in touch with people. So I do love that you mentioned that, because everybody's going to have a different base that they're starting from. And one of the examples that will come up on, we'll talk about the dollars, but I'll show you where I saw one where we followed the MREA models. And when we really tracked the numbers back to dials, it was like, whew, we weren't at 60% conversion. They were at 10% conversion, right? So on understanding your goals, does that help a little bit with the ticks? That, I mean, you just have to find out what yours is. And if your absolute have-to goal is close to make sure I pay my bills, then it's got to be 600 calls a month. I mean, it just has to be. There's no, don't even try and figure out a different way to do it. Just take the 600 and go and start getting really good at it. That's why you hear people when you go to classes, like I'll have people all the time go, well, should I do for sale by owners? Should I do expired? Should I door knock? Should I do first time home buyer seminars? You have to track your results. If you go to family reunion and you go to all these little breakout panels and there's 5 people up there talking about how they built their business on for sale by owners, I'm telling you that what they did was that they had 300 for sale by owners a week, and they got so good at it. And that was what they did every single week. And they built their business on it, that they mastered it. So here's the fun thing. You get to do whatever you like to do. And I remember one specific coaching call I had once where an agent came onto the call. This was back when I was a MAPS coach. And they were like, you know, I want to come up with a really good FSBO program. So, you know, for a month, we're working on this for sale by owner program and really tracking the numbers and creating the results so that we know you can turn X amount of sales from this program. And we're 4 calls in and talking about all this stuff. And the agent says, yeah, I really just hate for sale by owners. They're not nice. They're mean. And I was like, then why the heck have we spent the last 4 hours of the month talking about for sale by owners? What do you like to do? Right. And it was like, I love giving back to charities, local charities. And if I could get business from the charities and give back to the charity, that's what I'd really love to do. Well, okay, you get to do whatever you want. Let's develop a plan around getting the mailing list of every charity in your community. It's like, you can do that. We can do whatever we want. It's real estate. We can make it up. So if you went in and proposed to the director of that charity that you're going to donate $500 or $100 back for every sale that comes out of this, there's got to be a way to find a win-win that it would be good for them to give the list to you to market to those people. Again, there's a lot more into that, but you guys get to do whatever you want. You get to design your life, but you got to know what the basics are. And another thing too, a lot of people that I see that are struggling to get their real estate going, they may have a nest egg that they're tapping into while they're going. And that nest egg is a little bit too much of a comfort zone. And as that money's disappearing, what you have to figure out at some point is how much longer it's going to last you, what you've taken out so that you could put it back, and what you've been taking out every month that you need to create to live off of, and quit taking the nest egg. And the nest egg shows up a lot, whether it's an inheritance or life insurance or whatever it might be, money I saved up while I was at my other job to get going in real estate. Well, if you saved up 100,000 and you're spending 5 of it a month, it's going to eventually run out. So you have right now to figure out how many sales would it take to replace the money I've taken out so far and cover my monthly bills. And then we can drill that down to what needs to happen every single day to just quit taking that money out. Unfortunately, people are just kind of flying by the seat of their pants and not really tracking their results and just grabbing at straws, looking for anything that sticks. If there's any one thing out there that all of us got into real estate and we just started it and we started getting listings, we'd all be doing that one thing. But there's 100 different ways to do it. Now, just understanding where the money goes too, because as we're starting to trickle this down, we need to make sure that the number matches the real goal of what you need to cover your bills every month. And this just shows the different ways that the dollar gets chopped up, right? I mean, 50% of every dollar we earn goes to the other agent. The commission is split when you sell a house. The market center's got their split structure, which we just talked about that in the ALC yesterday. And the real true benefit and the value that you get out of that split is that offer. You get a front debt, you get a Julia for $20,000 a year, and that's still getting the office for free. I think she probably charges us more than $20,000 a year. It might be close. I don't know. Right. I don't know if she's listening. She's saying more. So what I'm saying though, is you get a front desk, you get a conference room, you get copy machines, you get computers, you get all that stuff. I can't go open up my own market center or my own franchise for $20,000 a year. So that's where that company dollar comes out of there. You got to figure that in there. And then you've got your business expenses. So on top of that, you still have the expenses to run your business. So you end up with the one at the end of the day. So you got to track all that in your goals when you're figuring all this stuff out to make sure you got the right one. Oh, and don't forget, we didn't take out taxes yet. We just had the first time agent seminar last night. And it's like those taxes can catch up to you pretty quick. So here's just a sample thing. If your average sale price is $300,000 and your average commission is $9,000, this is pretty darn close to our market. So it should be a pretty good example. And you know the market center is going to get $20,000. I should have corrected that. Franchise royalty is $3,000. You're going to have really $23,000 invested coming out of your commission checks. For anybody who's new, if you just started at Keller Williams, you're paying it as you go, and you don't owe the difference. So if you don't cap out and pay your whole money in, you still got use of everything. You had a front desk person, you got your image is you have a full-blown office sitting there. That is your office that you're running your business out of. So this kind of breaks it down, and it'll be a little bit off because of the company dollar sitting at a higher number. But if you had a net income goal of $100,000 and you capped out and you paid in $30,000, based on the MREA models, if you had the right percentage of money spent on marketing, and this is another real touchy subject in a different class, is that if you're supposed to spend $50,000 in marketing and you're an individual agent, and you did some things yourself and you didn't really spend 50,000 and you made 100 grand, what Gary's going to always challenge you on is that if you didn't spend the money, if you had spent the money on the right marketing things, you probably would have done more income. And the income's exponentially more than what you will spend on the marketing if you do the right stuff. So that total GCI to cover all those expenses, you're gonna have to generate $180,000. And then your average sale price is $9,000. So, or commission check is $9,000. You gotta have 20 sales to make $100,000. So this is a real basic formula to start with to figure out really, truly how much income you need to bring in to cover all of your expenses. Any questions on any of that? This is the math stuff that's not real fun. So here's the fun part. This command, when you plug your stuff into command on setting, there's a goal tab in command that you can start putting in these numbers like your income, and it will figure out and track your actual average sale, your average GCI, your number of sales. As you're going through the year, it will actually track for you and tell you where all your money's coming in, where it's going. So all that formula calculating, you can do it right inside command, and then it's right there in front of you all the time. Super, super cool, super easy. Carol lights up on this thing every time she talks about it. So now we're going to come back to, so what are the right activities that we need to do to make sure that we're hitting our numbers? And so let me pause there. Is there anybody that is trying to figure out what the right activities are, or struggling with that, or not hitting your goals, or maybe just having trouble with this goal thing all the way around? And how do I really get going and start making money? I mean, is that a common thing, or you figuring it out, or what? Anybody?
Yeah, I think that's where I get stretched out. I get this and I get that. And then, I'll start working on this and somebody will be like, that doesn't work. And, sometimes I go ahead and do it. Sometimes I don't, based upon how I feel about it. But yeah, there is no right thing. And, hearing you say it today, do that thing that makes you happy. I think that's important. Sitting down and figuring out what that is for sure is the hardest part, I think, because it goes back to, I don't know what's going to produce.
Yeah. Well, and if you, anyone, this is for everyone. If you really are struggling with that, I mean, this is the place. Just pick up the phone and call me and say, all right, so you're talking about goals and talking about the right things. And I hate for sale by owners. I hate this, but here's my number. And here's what I know I need to do every month. I'm just going to ask, what do you like to do? I mean, you could say something. If you're talking to me, it's like, I love to eat ice cream. Okay, let's figure out how we can get two listings a month from eating ice cream. And you start there, right? And you figure it out. And maybe it is truly comes back to finding all the ice cream shops. And I'm just kind of saying, we could figure out a way to do it, whatever it might be. Here was kind of an example. This was the one thing that I saw really show up in one of the agents that we were coaching. We were tracking actual conversion rates. And where I picked this up from was, I don't know if it was Dave Jenks or if it was Gary Keller or who it was, but they said, now you need to know what your actual conversion rate numbers are, because these are actually pretty, let's see if it'll zoom in on it here. Oh, these are actually pretty, they're textbook conversion rates. So when you're looking at your listing side of your business, they're saying for you to have 25 listing appointments, you're probably going to convert 80% of those. And this is just a standard. And that was based on the people that they interviewed in the MREA book. And out of those 80%, that's going to come down to 20.58 listing appointments. You're going to sell 65 of them. 65% of them. See, like right now, the numbers we might be selling 90% of them because the market's so out of control, but that would equal 13 listings. So they knew they had to have 26 sales to hit their goal. And if they knew half of it was listings and half of it was buyers, that's what they went through. So on buyer appointments, it was 65% of the buyers you meet with will actually sign the buyer agency agreement, and 80% of those people will buy. Just giving you textbook stuff. What we knew about buyer agencies and why we talked about having the buyer consultation and getting that buyer agency signed is that 40% would buy from you if you didn't do this one step. That 6 of your next 10 buyers will actually disappear and get away. And again, one of the things when you really start tracking your numbers yourself and using ticks and really hardcore tracking, because we like, as agents, we like to tell ourselves things that make it sound like we're doing okay. And if you track that, most agents would say, well, I mean, I don't know that I'm at 40% conversion rate. And it's like, all right, so let's track how many internet leads you get on the phone, right? And then how many of those people you close. Here's a great one. This is like a most current one that I think is the biggest. We got a little hype around it. Everybody talks about it. Everybody's doing client appreciation parties. Client appreciation parties are awesome and they're the hype and everybody's doing them. Now, every time I hear somebody talk about it, it's like we had 2,000 people show up at our client appreciation party and we got 75 referrals from that client appreciation party. And what I'm saying with this and that is, okay, so you got 75 appointments. Can you give me the list of the names of those 75 people right now? Most people can't do that. If you did, then I would ask, so of those 75 people, here's the names. Let's go through them. Have you closed any of these people? I can tell you they didn't close 75 of them. Probably, how many do you think they closed? Probably not even 35 of them, right? So how many of those 75 people actually met with you for a listing appointment after the party? And that's where nobody's tracking the numbers anymore. But we had a party, it's 2,000 people and 75 referrals. How many closings? Nobody can tell me the number, the exact number from, because of the party, we got 10 closings. See, I tracked it. It's in the book. If you guys haven't gotten a copy of the E-Myth Real Estate Agent yet, you can get it. And in that one chapter, I think it's like chapter 6 or 8, I track a service where we bought leads and we had 1,000 leads come in. in the whole year, we've got 1,000 leads and it cost me $24,000, $2,400 a month for this lead service. And I don't buy leads, but this was back probably 10 years ago. One of my coaching clients when I was at MAP made me sign up for Boomtown. And not so much, don't worry about the company name. This is everything around the board, but I got 1,000 leads. I went through every single number at the end of the year, name, and I looked in my database. Like, this is grueling. However, I needed to know what the real numbers were. So I had to do this exercise at the end of the year. So I went through every name and saw how many of them made it in the database. Out of 1,000 people, 100 of them made it in the database. 100 people off that list were in the database. So I basically paid $24,000 for 100 names, not 1,000 leads, right? So that was the first wake-up call. The second one was, out of those 100, we had actually closed 24 of them. So now this thing sounds really awesome, $24,000 for the year for 1,000 leads, and I closed 24 deals. So we made, what is that, 48 and 48, 50-50, it's 80, about $92,000 in commissions on 24 sales, I think is what it boiled down to. So out of my $24,000 that I paid out of my pocket, I made $48,000 for the year. So my profit was $24,000. So I spent $24,000 to profit 24. So I got my 24 back and I made 24. Here was the scary thing, is that I gave $48,000 to my buyer's agents because they were the ones that were converting the leads, right? So they got $48,000, I got $24,000, and I'm the one that wrote the check for $24,000. So as a business owner, I was like, this is why I coach and share, because I dug all this down on my own business. And I was like, well, this is crappy. I mean, so now we have a different conversation. Okay, so it's cool, I didn't lose money, but here's the deal. As a business owner, I don't like the risk of spending 24 to maybe make 24. And you made 48, by the way. So this year, let's get 300 of them in the database. Let's do this a little better than we did the first year. And let's close 75 deals if we get 300, was my assumption, right? So we tracked it, another 1,000 leads the second year, still around 100, still around 20 closings. So year 3, I basically said, here's the deal. You guys take over the $2,400 a month, because you made 48 grand last year and you made 48 grand the second year. So you pay the 24,000, you'll still make $24,000 and let me make 48 this year. Guess what they said? They didn't want to take it on. I wasn't going to sign the contract. I wasn't going to do the 24 anymore. So I didn't do it. I mean, we can work our own database and put 100 people in there. So that's what I mean by tracking your numbers and your goals down to the activities. So they weren't doing any different activities the second year. By the way, I told him, I said, if you convert 75, I'll sign a 10-year contract. If you can get 300 people in there and we close 75, I'll sign a 10-year contract all day long and I'll keep paying the 24,000. But it didn't happen. So know your actual conversion rates. And one of the things that I share here is take it clear back from appointments to dials. You could even get as serious as dials versus answers the phone versus appointments if you want to get super, super serious on your numbers. So I'm going to show you how to break this down on the 411. And yeah, we're just about perfect timing. First of all, the 80-20 rule. Well, actually, let me stop there because that was a pretty intense exercise. Does anybody have any questions around that? Really, truly tracking the conversion rates and all that stuff. Is it something that you probably feel you need to really know what those numbers are and really just get one thing that you like to do and start tracking it? Track it for, I mean, make a commitment for 6 months. The cool thing is Gary says, make a commitment for a year and don't stop anything before 6 months of that commitment. So you're going to do that one thing for 6 months. And that one thing for 6 months, if you get to 6 months and it's not even starting to generate what it should have been generating, that's when you can cut it off early and just stop it, cut it off as a loss, whatever it is. But if it looks like it's starting to ramp up over those months, you can take it out a full year to see if you made your money. That's why I did that one a year, right? That's a very personal example. Like I said, it's in the book. I tracked all the numbers. The other thing we tracked was we called every single sign call, lead back, internet call for 1 month. We called them 3 times a day for 3 days straight. because we had talked to somebody that said, hey, we got a 60% rate that we've had this person on the phone before we give you the lead. And I'm like, how the heck could you have 60%? I've been doing everything to try and get anybody on the phone, and I'm not anywhere near 60%. Oh, well, we called them 9 times in 3 days. We just kept hammering them until they answered the phone. And so I was like, oh, okay. So I did my own experiment. And sure enough, we went from converting 1 or 2% to about 15%. That we got names, addresses, phone numbers, got a live person on the phone. So we more than quadrupled the results on it by doing 3 and 3 is what I called it. Anyway, on this, so that talks about that effort. So the 20% of what you, well, you guys have seen this before. 20% generates 80% of your results. 20% of what you do generates 80% of your results. The one thing you got to keep in mind is that 80% of what you did yesterday is generating 20% of your results. So if you're spending most of your day focused on the wrong activities, that's why you're stuck wherever you are in your business. If that's 20% of what you could get. Now, another way to look at this is 20% of the money that comes into your business. Did I say that right? 80% of what you do generates 20% of your money that you have in, whatever your income was. So your income last year, if it was $50,000, 80% of what you did brought in the $50,000. If you would like that 50,000 to be 100 this year, or if you'd like your 100 to be 200 this year, and you want to double your income from last year, and if you're new and you don't know what that income is yet, you'll figure that one out pretty quick. Your first year, we're in it. But all I have to do is figure out what that 20% is and do it 40% of the day. So if you figure out what the 20% was that you did last year to make 100,000 and you do it 40% of your day, so that's not even half. It's just 40% of your day. You'll double your income. It's another way to look at the 80-20 rule. So it is all about those right activities. And it's like, so here's the saying, I've heard this so many times. What is the one thing that you can do right now that would make everything else easier and unnecessary? And so it's not grabbing at straws, but it's like, what's the one thing that is my 20%, which is setting appointments, right? So what's the one thing right now? If I set 5 appointments a month, it would make it unnecessary for me to have any debt, whatever that might be. Anybody have anything that they're wondering, what is the one thing that makes anything easier? Or when you see this statement, you don't quite understand it. It's worth breaking down if you don't. You got to figure out what the 20% is, though. Is there anybody that's struggling with how do you know what the 20% is? The 20% is whatever generates an appointment, because listings drive your business. And so if you get a listing appointment, that whatever you did to get that listing appointment, that's your 20%. Everything else you're doing that's not getting you an appointment is 80%. And you'll figure out what your 20% is. So on this, what successful agents do every day is they focus on the 20% more, which always comes back to lead generation. It's the 4 laws of lead generation. Build your database, feed it every day, systematically communicate with it, and then you can service all the leads that come your way. All right, so the last thing I want to leave on, and this is probably just enough time to go over this. Here's, anybody not heard of a 411 before? Wave your hand, flash your mic, do whatever. Have you heard of a 411 before? Right? Goal tracking thing. Let me tell you how this really, really works. And I'm going to explain it with this form. In your book, you're actually looking at the online version where you can plug these in online. But I want you to just have me walk through how to really use a 411, and you'll really get the power of this. So there's an annual goal, which is the 1. Then there's a monthly goal, which is the 1. And then there's the 4 weeks for that month, which is the 4. Here's the way to do this. If you had this sheet, you can download this sheet from just about anywhere, Google it, and find this sheet. Here's how I would do it. Whatever your money goal is, whatever your transaction goal is, put those in your annual goal. Go make 12 photocopies before you do anything else. 12 copies, because there's 12 months. So now you got your annual goal copied on 12 copies. Now what I do is I take the first copy of those 12 and I look at the monthly goal, and that's the month of January. And what is 1/12 of that, whatever I put in there. So everything in the annual goal gets divided by 12, and then it's going to get divided by 4. So it needs to be the activity. If it's 20 dials to get 100 calls, to get 3 appointments, to get $15,000, that's what the goal is. So the $15,000 got chopped down into, my average commission is $5,000. So I need 3 sales a month. So what do I need to do every week to make sure I get 3 sales a month? And those are the things that are going to end up on your 4-1. This is your must have to do list. Okay. So 12 copies, take the first month and write January on it and write your monthly goal. So that if it's 100,000, well, we're going to say 120,000 for simplicity's sake. So I've got 12,000 I need to do in January. Now, once you write 12,000 down, take that piece of paper and go make 4 copies of it for the weeks. So now you've got a copy with the annual goal and your 12,000. Now on those 4 copies, on week copy number 1, you got to write $3,000 for week number 1. Set that page aside, grab the second sheet, and on week number 2, don't put anything on week number 1. Week number 2 is $3,000. Set that one aside, grab the third sheet, skip the first 2 weeks, write $3,000 under week 3, and then grab the last sheet and write $3,000 on week 4. Now I'm going to put them all back together, and I'm going to do that for each month, right? So as I go through now, I need to make $3,000 in commissions every week to get $12,000 a month to make my goal of $120,000. So now you can look at that $3,000. That's 1 commission check at least. So I need to get what, 3 buyers and 2 listing appointments to get one of these things to stick. So I need 3 buyers and I need 2 listing appointments. And Dave, until you figure out what your conversion rates are, you're kind of using the textbook. And if you don't hit your goals in the first week or the second week or the third week, then you need to start bumping those numbers up. So that's where, to get that appointment, I need to dial 100 numbers. And when I dial 100 numbers, I get 40 people on the phone, I get 20 people in the database, and I get 1 appointment. So I did my numbers that week. But if I didn't hit my numbers, then I didn't do my 100, I got to roll my 100 over to week number 2. So now I have to do 200 in week number 2. I didn't sell anything in week 1. And I want 12,000 a month to hit 120 for the year. So now I have to get 6,000 in week 2. And now I have to do 200 calls and track your numbers, right? And if I don't get a sale that week, then it's $9,000 on week 3 and it's 300 calls. So whatever you thought you were going to do for fun in week 3 is over. You're going to be on the phone for 5 hours a day, at least 4 days this week, until you get those appointments that you need to get your $12,000. If you choose not to do that, then you're not going to make $120,000 this year, or you will do it by luck. Somewhere in the middle of the year, get 1 extra sale. It's all by luck. So just decide, I'm not doing 120 right now. I'm on track to do 100,000. So there's 20 grand gone at the end of the year. Looks like I'm not paying my credit card off, and either be okay with it or start doing the right activities, right? Change your goal immediately. So that's what the way the 411 works. And as you track those numbers, your next month is going to be a little more efficient because you won't have to do those grueling, 5.5-hour days for 3 days straight just calling. But you have to do, it's the absolute have to list. This is not your to-do list. So hopefully that makes sense, and that will keep you super laser focused on the right activities. If it's add 5 people to the database a day, then that's going to trickle to 1,200 people for the annual goal. I want 1,200 relationships in my database. I want 120 a month, which means I have to put in 5 a day, right? And that's doing 5 a day anyway. So accountable people achieve results others can only dream of because they focus on it. Like if they don't hit their goals, they got to make it up next month. It's not just a kinda. Anybody have any questions on any of that? I'm going to go to for those of you that are still here, we had a couple people drop off. There is a little survey for you to go through and let us know what you thought of the class today. I'm going to dump it in the chat box so that you can actually just click this and it will open up a separate window so you can fill out the survey after we're done, if we log off and before we're done. So anyway, I went to the last slide. There we go. Get back there. What questions do you guys have? Has this given you a different perspective on goal setting? It's never a fun conversation, guys. Although the 411 actually chops it down so much and makes it so manageable that when you look in that weekly goal and it is just dials to appointments to contracts written, and that's all you're looking at, then that's your 20%. That if you focus on that 40% of your day until it happens every week, I'm telling you, you're going to be looking back 6 months from now going, dang, that 411 was awesome. It had me focused on the right activities. It's not your to-do list. And once you do those things, you can go back to your to-do list and go do the other fun stuff or try the other things and see how they work out. So hopefully that was good stuff for you guys and you think about goals a little different now.